truckers that we've been talking to, and I asked you before, what's your plan? Everyone's saying you guys are leaving. When are you heading out of town?
Well, I have a plan to leave in August, just around the corner, to get my favorite pizza, and I'm gonna come right fucking back.
All right, well, that was not part of the plan there to drop that F-bomb, but you're standing strong, and you want the Prime Minister to know that you have no interest in leaving at this point.
Not at all.
Okay.
That, of course, was 3.5 years ago here in Ottawa at the Freedom Convoy, and that was Zaba Vizzy, who is, believe it or not, we'll be talking about this in a minute. He's at the pre-trial stage 3.5 years later. Thankfully, there's better news for Robert Dinel, whose charges have been stayed, but we'll get into that in a bit. We have an exciting show ahead for you. I'm David Krayden, broadcasting to you live, as always, from Ottawa. Back in a moment.
The Prime Minister lied, and his minions continue to lie.
Your home is your castle. We're calling on the government to introduce and immediately pass the Stand on Guard law.
But we also need to resolve to resist.
Now, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre released a housing announcement and the housing policy for the Conservative Party. It doesn't sound remarkably different from what he was talking about during the election, but it's remarkably different from what Prime Minister Mark Carney is doing, which is engineering a catastrophe. And it's Carney's carnage. That's what Pierre Poilievre is talking about. Before we get there, I wanted to bring you up to date on what's happening with Freedom Convoy trials going on. As I said, this is Zaba Vizzy here, who was beaten up during the protest, apparently by cops, either from, I'm not sure if they were RCMP or for city cops, but there's a Fox News report I want to show you here. Thank God this stuff is still up, because, and here we are, this guy is at the pre-trial stage at 3.5 years after the alleged offense. This to me is incredible. And what's even more amazing is that the mainstream media has not a single news report about this trial. Couldn't find anything. Found this on X this morning. This is Right Blend. He's very faithful in showing up at all of the Freedom Convoy trials and doing reporting on it. So he was the only one really to talk about is how Csaba is being incredibly treated here. I mean, he went through hell during the Freedom Convoy, and he's going through hell in lawfare. He's finally having his trial. But let's listen to this report from Tucker Carlson during or in the aftermath of the Freedom Convoy trial in 2022.
It appears to have you surrendering peacefully to the police, and then the next we see you're being kneed in the ribs by Justin Trudeau's men. Did you fight them?
No, sir, not at all. I get down from my truck. I went down right on my knee. I put my hands behind my head, and I was waiting them to take me away. So in that moment, the police officer, they start to push me with those sticks. They was yelling to me, go back, go back. And I just told them, hey, I'm the driver. And then suddenly somebody yelled, arrest him, arrest him. So they dragged me in. They lie me down on my belly. I don't recall how many of them they was on top of me. They were squeezing the air slowly, slowly. I feel like I was beaten, but I took it like a man. So
good for you. At least someone's behaving like a man. You seem to be having trouble breathing. I could hear it through my earpiece. Were you injured by this?
Yes, they break my body a little bit, but not my spirit.
Not your spirit. Is this no? So you lived. Does
this not remind you a bit of the George Floyd incident? Except this man wasn't high on drugs, and he was involved in a legitimate protest, and yet it sounds like what happened to him was potentially as bad or even worse than what happened to George Floyd in the States. But nobody talks about this in Canada. And the mainstream media hasn't even reported that his trial's finally started.
If I got it right, under Ceausescu in Romania, did you expect this kind of behavior in the formerly free nation of Canada?
No, sir, not at all. When I moved to Canada, everything was wonderful. People, they are talking with you on the street without knowing you, like asking you, hey, how are you? I never experienced stuff like that before. So I was like so happy. I said, geez, that's so nice. Everything was beautiful in Canada in the last 20 years, I can say. And the last 2 years, it's like impossible to live here anymore.
Well, we hope you'll come to this country, which is, whatever its problem, is freer than Canada. And
yeah, absolutely amazing. How the mainstream media ignores things like this. And before we get to the Pierre Poilievre announcement, I want to show you this because there's another update on Freedom Convoy. And this, of course, is Robert Dinel. He had better news than Zaba Vizzy, who, of course, is just starting this whole process. Seems like Robert Dinel has had his charges stayed because of the length of time it's taken.
You did a great job. You did a great
So what was the decision then? That
it was stayed under Section 11B of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms for unreasonable delay.
Okay.
And the trial judge went into great detail on the early days of the trial. There were originally 5 days set aside for the trial, and then we had to set 3 more days. And there were further days set later in 2024 and earlier this year. But his reasons for decision were focused primarily on the first 8 days of trial, and said it was nothing that the defense counsel did during that time could impute the delay to the defense, that it was all crown delay or institutional delay.
Yeah, and these things, drag on. This is like 3 years out from the actual occurrence, and these things drag on a long time. So,
yes.
Yeah, okay.
And, because there were a lot of issues before the trial dates were set. There were judicial pre-trials. Crown counsel had been changed 3 times.
Yeah.
Defense counsel was not getting the disclosure it requested. So I'm pleased with the decision. I'm going to get a copy of it and review it. I think it's a good example of, hopefully, it will stand as a good example of what not to do to cause unreasonable delay.
Yeah, so it's a great result, and on your birthday, but the process was certainly part of the punishment in this case.
The process was difficult. It was difficult for my client. It was difficult for me. But at the end of the day, we're pleased with the result.
Okay, thank you, and congratulations.
Thank you, Daisy Media, for that report. Chris Daisy, great reporting as always. He's always there at the courthouse, and I'll be back there shortly, of course, because we're following the continuing saga of Chris Barber and Tamara Lich. This month, they're talking about requisitioning, extorting Chris Barber's truck, of course, Big Red, and it won't be till October, mid-October, until the sentencing date for these two. And it's already been over 2 years because it was Labor Day 2 years ago that these two went on trial, and it's just absolutely shocking that this has continued this long. But nothing surprises me, and it's so bizarre because when they were discussing the sentencing date for Chris Barber and Tamara Lich, I remember the judge, Heather Perkins McVeigh, saying, "No, can't do it that day. I have a homicide case on that day." So how many other homicide cases are being backlogged because of all of these peaceful protesters being put through the ringer for mischief charges and whatnot? It's incredible. It's mind-boggling. This is a narco-tyranny, which seems to be the word on everybody's lips now, since I heard it again a couple of, maybe 6 weeks ago. One of the comment sections said, hey, David, ever heard of a narco-tyranny? I said, yeah, I remember that. It's where the state is persecuting and prosecuting its political enemies rather than real criminals, to put it in a nutshell. That's what it's all about. That's what Canada's all about now. It's about the government going after its political enemies. And it's amazing to me that we just sort of blindly and blandly accept this. So we're getting the Pierre Poilievre in a second here, but I wanted to share a couple of posts from the food professor, who I would like to invite to come on this show, actually. I think we'll do that this week. We're going to invite him on, and he's always got some fascinating material. If you want to know, he says, where the economy is headed, don't ask an economist, ask a trucker. I did, and they usually see the signs months before the data confirms it. What I heard isn't good news for the Canadian economy. In other words, their goods aren't shipping, goods aren't moving, because the economy is stagnant. That is what he's talking about. And this is fascinating. Since 2015, Canadian grocery shoppers have faced steadily greater pressure at the checkout. The gap with the United States is widening. Right there, that's the Canada in red, US in blue. You see that? And the trend shows no sign of reversing. Now, today, I went to buy a bag of coffee beans from my local grocery store. Now, a couple of years ago, I remember spending $11.99 on this bag of coffee beans. And I always buy them because they're great coffee beans and they're the least expensive that I've ever found on the market. Bought those same coffee beans today, $19.99. And they're telling us we have what, like 7 and 8% inflation? This is nonsense. They're cooking the books. They're cooking the books. And that's exactly what's going on here. Now, we'll be getting into some immigration questions in a bit, but let's listen to Pierre Poilievre talk about what Mark Carney has done to the housing market in Canada. And this is incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Consultants and bureaucracy. He said that he would have more invest more, he said. Yet since he became Prime Minister, $62 billion of net investment has left Canada, almost all of it going to the United States of America, in what the National Bank described as the biggest net outflow of investment in any 5-month period in history. He said he would be elbows up, that he was going to handle Donald Trump and negotiate a win by July the 21st. Ever since, he's been elbows down. He has secured no deal, and he has made concession after concession while getting absolutely nothing in return. He said he would build, baby, build. That was a quote. Well, build what? Let's start with national projects. He said he would build at unimaginable speeds. Yet not only is there 0 national projects under construction today, 6 months after he took office, in fact, he has not granted a single permit for a major project to go ahead. He hasn't even published a list of projects he might one day consider expediting for approval. Meanwhile, there are 39 projects that are sitting in the bureaucracy waiting for approval, that for which Mark Carney only needs to get out of the way. And yet nothing is getting built, nothing is getting done, and our economy is collapsing. He said that he would create jobs. Yet since he took office, there are 86,000 fewer people working today than there were when he started off. In fact,
the unemployment rate is over 7% now.
Unemployment is now the second highest in the G7. And speaking of the G7, he has promised to give the fastest growth in the G7, when in reality he has given an economy that is shrinking fastest in the G7. Again, he promised we'd be growing the fastest in the G7. In reality, we are shrinking the fastest. The single worst economy in the G7 today, after 6 months of Mark Carney's promises. And of course, nowhere is that more true than in housing. Now, we've been talking for years about the Liberal housing crisis, and they doubled the cost. They priced an entire generation out of homes. They did this through out-of-control money printing and immigration, which inflated demand, and funding local bureaucracies and high taxes that block construction and supply. That's nothing new. You say, well, of course we have a housing crisis after 10 years of Liberals. There's nothing new in that. But I'm here today to talk about the next Liberal housing crisis. So this crisis has changed into something new and even worse than there was before. They first inflated the housing bubble, and now Liberals are bursting the housing bubble.
I first inflated the housing bubble. Now they're bursting that bubble, and it's going to be economic turmoil, catastrophe. And this is why. Poilievre is not just saying, oh, yeah, we need to build more homes. Yeah, we need to get the economy going before it doesn't start again.
The bubble is bursting, and it is hemorrhaging jobs and construction right across the country. Nowhere worse than here in Ontario. The facts are staggering. First of all, let's start with the promise that he would double home building. Well, according to Mr. Carney's own housing agency, home building is expected to plummet by 13% over the next 2 years. But here in the GTA, year over year, it is down 49%. In Kelowna, it's down 36%. Pre-sales are down 48%, and they are 82% below the 10-year average. You talk to home builders, he said he would be staggering. First of all, let's start with the promise that he would double home building. Well, according to Mr. Carney, and they are 82% below the 10-year average.
82% below the 10-year average. I want that statistic to hit home. These are the kind of numbers we had in 1930, 31, in the beginning of the Great Depression. So this is staggering, is what he's saying. And we are looking at not just falling into we are in a recession, in other words. And this recession could be another depression.
You talk to home builders in the GTA today, and they will tell you this is the worst they have ever seen it in generations. I've talked to home builders that have been in this business for 50 years, and they say they have never witnessed this kind of carnage. The governments keep talking about how they have these wonderful plans for home building. You know what they need to do? Only one thing. Get out of the way. Get
out of the way. That is the gist of this announcement. Government is not the answer. Government is the problem. And if Mark Carney thinks he's going to solve the housing crisis by having little sheds built for everybody, that's not going to do it. Anything the government leads is bound to be led astray.
Out of the way. These men and women back here, they know how to build homes. They know how to frame a house, to swing a hammer, to lay a foundation, to prepare the land. They know how to build homes. We have great home builders who know how to build homes. The only thing they need is permission. But they can't get it because of slow bureaucracy and blocking things from going ahead. And so today, Conservatives, we're not just going to oppose Mark Carney and Liberal failures. We're not just going to hold them accountable for the Liberal immigration crisis, the Liberal cost of living crisis, the Liberal crime crisis, and the Liberal jobs crisis. We're actually going to propose solutions. As we go back to Parliament, we want Mark Carney and the Liberals to steal our best ideas so that we can reverse the damage that they have done. And so today I join with my shadow Minister of Housing, Scott Aitchison, to call for the Liberals to immediately reverse the policies that have caused this new housing crisis with a 4-point plan. 1, axe the federal sales tax for all home buyers. I hear someone over here is giving a round of applause. She might be buying a home soon. For all home buyers, not just first-time home buyers, and for homes up to $1.3 million. 2, axe the capital gains tax on any monies reinvested in home building. So if a business or an individual sells an asset, they enjoy a capital gain, but they reinvest it in home building, there should be no capital gains tax This will cause a building boom right across the country. 3, incentivize municipalities to free up land, speed up permits, and cut their own development charges. The Prime Minister claimed that he was going to cut development charges nationwide by half. Since he took office, those charges have actually gone up. I'm calling for the Prime Minister to put the resources in the budget so that we can incentivize municipalities to cut the taxes they charge on building new homes. And 4th, get immigration under control. We can no longer add people 3 times faster than we add homes. We're going to continue to have shortages. These 4 steps will reverse the liberal housing hell, the disaster that has destroyed the dream of home ownership over the last 10 years. We are prepared to work with any party that will adopt these.
Hey, that provides a nice segue into the next topic of discussion, which is immigration. And I'm going to be showing this chart to you twice before I show you this clip from Tucker Carlson, because what's happening in the UK is also happening here in Canada. We are being absolutely overwhelmed by new immigrants coming in far too fast. And here's a post from Tom Quiggin. This official Government of Canada chart shows that 15,690,460, almost 16 million people have entered Canada since the Liberals were elected in 2015. Now, that is absolutely astounding. There's been a lot of talk lately about the temporary foreign worker program. We see that little bar at the bottom, the blue? That's your temporary foreign workers. You see the red? Those are students who come in and nobody keeps track of them. And you see the green? Those are students who can work 24 hours a week. And as I mentioned the other day, these are the people that are taking the jobs at the fast food outlets. These are the people you can't understand and can't understand you. Now, I'm not saying anything about a person's country of origin, their race or ethnicity. I think they should probably speak the English language if they're working in Ontario or British Columbia or Alberta. And they should probably be able to understand you speaking in English instead of having to repeat yourself 4 or 5 times and sometimes you still don't get the right order. That's who's taking the kids' jobs away. And that's how immigration looks in Canada. We have literally added almost 16 million people to this country in the last 10 years. And yeah, are there places for them to live? No. This is why the economy is in complete upheaval. Now, I want to show this great clip from the Piers Morgan show. We had Tucker Carlson was his guest, and they're talking about an issue that's always been very close to my heart. That being multiculturalism. We've been fed this pill since we were all kids in school that this is a multicultural country. And Tucker Carlson points out here that no, it's not. There's no country that's multicultural. There's always a dominant culture. And that's the culture either wins and the other culture loses. Canada's culture has changed dramatically, but it's not a multicultural. It's not like we can all just do our own thing. And we can all disagree, or we can all agree to disagree. That's not how it works. And I think this discussion here is extremely relevant and pertinent to what's happening in Canada today. Because the culture of this country has been radically refashioned as a result of the elites and as a result of excess immigration that's coming in way too quickly and changing, transforming the country we used to know. And let's have a listen to this discussion here. It's very interesting.
Multiculturalism as an idea is laughably stupid. It has never worked. We never had it anywhere, and it never will exist. But you did have different peoples. You had different religions. That was all totally fine. But there was one culture, as American culture. There's no such thing as a multicultural society. It's not sustainable. One culture will overwhelm the other. Again, it's not the same as race. It's not identical to race. It's connected, but it's not the same. But multiculturalism is by definition insane. No, it's never happened. It never will happen. One culture will predominate. It will impose its values on everybody else. I mean, the gay thing, which was not a thing 40 years ago, gay was a slur, all of a sudden becomes mandatory to worship at the altar of gayness or whatever. Trans stuff, sodomy, pride, all this stuff. That was not a thing 40 years ago. We're the same age. You know that. It was reviled. Now it's beloved. That's a culture change, but it's not multicultural.
I don't think you have
can't
to
dissent. Although you can't dissent from it.
Yeah, but
you're not allowed to dissent from it.
But
if you're like, actually, I think sodomy's wrong. How does that work for you?
Look,
you go to jail in your country.
Well, what's happened with the gay thing, as you put it, is that actually we were an extremely homophobic society. It was only legal to be gay from the mid-60s in the United Kingdom, and I'm very glad I now live in a country where it's perfectly legal to do that.
So you buy the culture. You buy. Okay,
it's not
I'm
a culture.
Not even
I buy
attacking
people's
that.
right.
You obviously
I buy people's
fully...
right to have their own sexuality. My argument with the
culture. That's
my argument with the trans.
Wait, but that's never happened. That's never happened in the history of your country.
Well, the trans debate's different to the gay debate.
It's not different. It's not.
It is.
No, it's not. Look, I'm not attacking gays. I'm not attacking trans. No, I'm making a larger point that I know that you are capable of grasping, which is that these are cultural determinations. We decide what our culture is, what are our values, and that definition changes. So your country, let's just say its inception, modern England, 1066. The Normans come in, the French, who are actually Norse, but whatever, they come in, they invade your country, they impregnate your women, they put themselves in charge, they take all the castles. That's 1,000 years, okay? During that entire period, it was not okay to be gay until, as you said, 1966 or whatever. Oscar Wilde went to jail for it. So you have 1,000 years versus 60 years. Your culture changed, but there's only one culture. It went from being totally unacceptable to be gay to being mandatory to love gays.
It wasn't mandatory to love gays.
There's no multi in that.
It's not mandatory to love
gays.
It
is absolutely mandatory to love.
So why do we have Pride season in Canada? Of course it's mandatory. Why does Mark Carney talk about 365 days a year now celebrating so-called Pride? Tucker Carlson's dead on here. The culture has changed and you're either with it or you're an outsider.
You can have a view.
Really? What would happen? What would happen if you stood up in Parliament or on a television show in Great Britain and said, basically just describe what the average Victorian or even Edwardian thought of homosexuality, or just read Oscar Wilde's indictment but agreed with it? You'd lose your job. You might go to jail. There's not a multicultural there. There's one culture, and it's required. And that's true in every society because a culture is a commonly agreed upon set of values, which in their firmest form are called laws.
But those values can evolve.
This is true everywhere.
But those values can evolve.
Of course they evolve, but there's only one set of them. It's not multicultural. There's one set. You worship one God. It's true everywhere all the time.
But those values can evolve.
Of course they evolve, but there's only one set of them. It's not multicultural. There's one set. You worship one God in every society. Sorry.
But your country's values were established by the United States Constitution, and that's had, 26, 27 amendments? Right, so your own values, as determined by the founding fathers, they have evolved and been changed to accommodate changing times.
There's no doubt. Look, I'm not even arguing against change. That's natural. It's natural that people's views evolve.
So the culture changes.
Once you start rejecting the laws of nature, then you're doomed. But let me just say, no, of course, societies change. I get it. All I'm saying, I'm making a very discrete, specific point, which is, as an idea, is laughably stupid. It has never worked. We never had it anywhere, and it never will exist because it's contrary to human nature. One culture, one way of looking at things, one worldview will predominate, and it will punish all who deviate from it. That is the nature of societies. So if you're telling me it's multicultural, we can all live and have radically different values, that's just not true. It's never been true. It never will be true. So you're having one culture, one worldview predominate over another and dominate and suppress all dissent. That's just what it is, dude.
But
let's be honest.
I would point to the United States of America and the United Kingdom as two shining examples albeit not completely without their flaws, but shining examples of places that are deemed by the rest of the world to be not only multicultural, but very tolerant of other people's cultures in a way that has enriched their society. I certainly feel that about my country.
Your country's bankrupt, Piers Morgan. It's ironic. The title of his show is Piers Morgan Uncensored, because Britain is now the capital of censorship. Britain is now the capital of suppression of your words, of your thoughts, of everything you write on social media. The UK has become a basket case country. It's authoritarian. It's creeping towards totalitarianism. And what Tucker is trying to say here, and he does at another point in this interview, says revolution is coming. He says, I might not be planning it or approving of it, but the government is making it impossible to live normal lives all over the Western Hemisphere. And revolution is probably going to be a result, a consequence of that.
Well, I certainly think that inherent in Christianity is the notion of tolerance, and that draws from a core Christian concept, which is free will. You cannot force someone to convert. There's never been conversion by the sword in Christianity. People decide to believe in it. And so that is central to the religion, therefore it's been central to the society. Western civilization is Christian civilization. And so we call that tolerance. It's a respect for your inherent God-given right to make a choice about what you believe. Okay, so of course, that's always been a feature. My only point is, a society has a commonly agreed upon set of beliefs, rules, and laws that are the definition of the society itself. That's what a society is. So you can't have competing. You can't have, gay world and Sharia world living co-equally in a society. That does not happen. It will never happen. You have to pick one. Are we the Sharia society? Are we the party time gay rights society? Like, which one? And you can't face that reality. So you're just sort of snoozing along until the inevitable point where you're going to wake up and be like, my values have no bearing on what our society is anymore, because we've been invaded by other people with a totally different worldview, and they're now in charge. And that day is coming very soon for your country, and maybe it'll improve it. I don't think the UK could be a lot worse than it already is. It's this kind of disgusting, sad, self-hating, suicidal island that was once great. It kills me to see it as a half-English person. But that day is coming. It will change. You will either decide to be Western or Eastern. That's a choice that we're all going to face. I don't want to face that choice, but it's being foisted upon us by the architects of mass migration. Sorry.
I would question your characterization as my country as a sad, disgusting...
I would not. I would not. I would not question that. That's exactly what it's become. And we're going to have a look at some X posts when we come back after this brief break for the merchandise. Oh, have a look at those little pieces of merchandise. We're very proud of them. I think they're some of the best out there. And before I forget, we are going to be focusing on more of your comments at the end of the show, and especially super chats. Thank you, Billy Jack. Make Canada great again. There's a $10 Thank you. Thank you so much. And we're going to be doing this at the end of the show from now on. So I appreciate your support so much. Believe me, it's been a hard summer. We're going to have a great fall, and I'm optimistic, even as the country seems to be collapsing. Keep getting the truth out. Now, I wanted to show some tweets with you. Here we are. And this is fascinating. Here I showed you this already from Alex Zoltan, and there's the Right Blend, the Freedom Convoy. Yeah, and great show here. But I'm looking for this post from. This is fascinating. Nikki P. 50 million in excess population. 2,880,000 deaths from all causes from 2015 to 2024. Roughly 691,000 have emigrated out of the country since 2015. Medical assistance in dying has accounted for 60,301 deaths. Wow. So here's Jason James commenting on this chart, which we showed you earlier. This is insane. Canada imported 36.5% of its population, 36.5% of the population in the last 10 years. And that's just what they tracked. They didn't provide the numbers for those who entered illegally because they have no idea. Except the ones they put in hotel rooms, of course, 5-star hotel rooms. To put this in perspective, 5% would be huge. 10% would be a crisis. 36% is like an atomic bomb going off in every major city. No country on earth, not even the United States, has the infrastructure necessary to successfully integrate this many people in such a short period of time. And this is absolutely astounding. And as I said, I have sent the invite out to Dr. Naomi Wolf to be on this show and waiting to see what day that's going to happen. So the ostrich farm crisis continues, folks. Keep Katie and her family in your thoughts and prayers. Tuesday is the day that the stay on the potential cull is over. So hoping to hear an update tonight or tomorrow from Katie on this. And this, of course, is, if you've been following this, it is a tragedy in the making, but we're doing our best to stop that tragedy from happening. And we need your support, and we need to get Katie on more podcasts, more broadcasts, and to get the Trump administration involved in this, because that seems to be the only voice that Mark Carney will listen to. He's not listening to the voice of the people. Yeah, and more about the ostriches. Just incredible. And Elon Musk noted, wow, 36.5% of the population imported in the last 10 years. So we're doing everything we can. We're doing everything we can to save those ostriches, because it's not just ostriches on one farm. It's your property, your livelihood, your livestock, your pets, everything. So, and a reminder, September 20th, put it on your calendar, 10 a.m. Parliament Hill. If you're in Ottawa, provincial legislatures anywhere else in Canada, some cities, some specified cities, you can go to the City Hall. We'll have all of that information prior to September 20th, so you can go out and support the children. This is about parental rights, parents raising their kids, not the state. That's happening. And just wanted to keep you abreast of all that's going on this morning and this week, and we'll be giving you at least most of the news that you need to know, and hopefully all of it. But we will stop there. So thank you so much for watching today. It's always a pleasure to come to you. A little later today, we'll be back at the usual time tomorrow, 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time. And we will stay at that time for the rest of the week. And thank you so much for being a part of Krayden's Right and Stand on Guard. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. And we'll be back. Thanks for watching today. Goodbye and amen. Yes, Rob, we have no Trump in Canada, unfortunately. That is unfortunate.